Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're heading into, well, the vibrant heartlands of India. It's a place where you get that familiar smell of chai, but often it's mixed with something else, the smoke from traditional cooking.
That's right. We're talking about the old chulhas, fueled by firewood, cow dung cakes,
Yeah.
a very common sight.
Exactly. And India is facing this huge, ambitious challenge, shifting literally millions of households away from that towards cleaner options like liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, and other modern fuels.
It really is a massive shift, and it's not just swapping out a stove, is it?
No, not at all.
This is a really profound societal change. When you look at the big picture, it touches health, the environment, even economic empowerment for millions of people.
Absolutely. And that's our mission today, really,
Yeah.
to understand the spark behind this push, especially this big program called the Ujjwala Scheme.
hmm
We want to look at the progress, and there has been progress, but also the hurdles, the very real challenges that remain, and, the potential it holds.
Yeah, what could it achieve?
Because you'll see, it's not just about cooking. It's about health, a cleaner planet, and fundamentally empowerment. So let's dive in.
Okay. Well, the urgency here is pretty stark. When we talk about these traditional chulas, it's not just some quaint tradition.
Right.
It's a serious health hazard. A real smoke monster, you could say, lurking right there in rural kitchens. The consequences are quite dire.
Okay, so this smoke monster, what are the actual human costs? I mean, I've heard some alarming numbers. What does the data really tell us, especially for India?
Well, the World Health Organization figures are sobering. They estimate household air pollution from these fuels causes over 4 million premature deaths every year globally.
4 million. Wow.
And here's the thing. India carries a really significant share of that burden, a disproportionate amount. And it's mostly women and children who are hit hardest.
Because they're around the stoves the most.
Exactly. They spend the most time near these smoky stoves. It's like breathing in really bad city smog day in, day out, but inside their own homes. Lung-damaging stuff.
And beyond the immediate health impact, what about the broader environment? What are we looking at there?
Well, burning biomass, that's the firewood, the cow dung, releases carbon dioxide, obviously, but also black carbon.
Ah, black carbon.
Yeah, and that's a potent, fast-acting climate warmer. Plus, you've got deforestation. The constant need for firewood strips greenery from rural areas. It really changes landscapes.
So it's a double whammy, health and environment.
Precisely. Now, LPG, while it is a fossil fuel, let's be clear,
Sure.
it burns much cleaner, far fewer harmful emissions. So it's
Right.
definitely a step up, a significant improvement.
And there's a bit of irony here, isn't there? India is aiming for net zero emissions by 2070, a huge commitment.
Massive.
Yet you have millions of kitchens still, puffing out smoke. It makes you think, if we're serious about clean air and hitting those climate targets, LPG can't really be seen as a luxury anymore.
That has to be a basic necessity.
Exactly. Otherwise, we're just, well, blowing smoke.
Which brings us right to the main strategy here.
Yeah.
The Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, or PMUI,
Ujjwala, right?
launched back in 2016. The Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas drove this. And the goal was pretty noble. Transform rural kitchens. Get LPG connections to women in households below the poverty line.
Sort of like a get out of smoke jail free card, metaphorically speaking.
Kind of, yeah. Offering an escape from the health issues and just the sheer drudgery of traditional cooking.
And the scale, I hear the numbers are staggering.
Oh, they are. By March 2025, the scheme delivered 10.33 crore connections.
10 crore, that's over 100 million households.
100 million, yeah. Huge numbers. Enough to fill a couple of massive cricket stadiums, probably. And look at the budget commitment. It jumped from around 50,800 crore in 2022-23 to 12,000 crore for 2024-25.
Wow, nearly double. That shows serious intent.
It does. And they've adapted the scheme, too. There's Ujjwala 2.0,
Yes, the second version.
rolled out in 2021-22. This made it more flexible, especially for migrant families. They could get a connection with just a ration card and a self-declaration. No net for address proof.
That's a big deal for people moving for work.
A huge deal. It opened the door for millions more who might have been left out otherwise. Real practical thinking there.
So with all these connections, what's the early impact look like? Sounds like a big leap forward on paper.
It is. You could call it maybe a half-cooked success story, but definitely a success. Over 10 crore women now have access to LPG. That itself is massive.
And the practical effect.
It's directly cut down the time spent on unpaid chores like collecting firewood. We're talking maybe up to 2 hours a day freed up for some women.
2 hours, that's significant time.
Absolutely. Time they can potentially use for education, maybe earning some income or just, having a bit of rest. Plus, the reduction in indoor air pollution is tangible, fewer breathing problems.
And are some areas seeing more success than others?
Yeah, we've seen big increases in LPG penetration in states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, places where traditional fuels were absolutely dominant before.
Okay, but you called it a half-cooked success. So despite all these connections, the flame isn't burning bright everywhere. Where's the main problem?
All right, here's the twist. India's done a great job getting the connections in. The real challenge now is keeping them used. And the biggest hurdle, hands down, is the refill cost.
The cost of the gas itself.
Exactly. Many households use their LPG very sparingly, almost like it's a luxury item, not for everyday cooking.
And I guess that makes sense when you look at the price tag. A refill cylinder, what, costs around 800 to 1,000?
Somewhere in that range, yeah. And for families living close to the edge, that's a really tough choice. Groceries or gas.
Wow. Yeah.
There's data from the National Family Health Survey, the NFHS-5, from 2019-21. It showed that while about 63% of rural households had an LPG connection.
Okay, so a majority have the connection.
Yes, but only around 40% were actually using LPG as their main cooking fuel.
40%, that's a big gap between access and primary use.
It's a huge gap. Many are falling back on the smoky chulha. It's called fuel stacking, using both. It clearly shows the cost barrier is just too high for consistent use.
What about subsidies? Aren't there subsidies to help with the cost?
There are, yes, direct benefit transfers. But sometimes there are delays in getting the money.
Bureaucratic hurdles.
Exactly. And if the money doesn't arrive on time, families are left in a tight spot, forced back to using firewood or dung cakes.
Okay, so cost is number one. What about just getting the refill, even if you can afford it? Any issues there?
Oh, absolutely. That's the next big problem. Supply chain snags.
Logistics.
Logistics in rural India can be, well, tricky. Supply chains aren't always reliable. Distributors often prioritize urban areas where demand is concentrated.
So remote villages might have to wait.
Weeks, sometimes. Imagine ordering something essential like basic food and being told, yeah, maybe next month. It's incredibly frustrating. Plus, poor roads, lack of storage infrastructure, it all adds up.
Right. A logistical nightmare in some places.
Definitely.
And then there's the human element, the habits. How much does culture play into this?
A significant amount, actually. It's often overlooked. Many rural women are just comfortable with chulhas. It's what they know, what their mothers used.
Familiarity.
And some specific dishes, certain types of flatbreads like roti, they feel are harder to get right on an LPG stove. It takes adjustment.
Like trying to get your grandma to swap her old favorite pan for a newfangled gadget.
Pretty much. The comfort of the known is a powerful thing. Change takes time and effort.
So it feels a bit like the government hands over this shiny new cylinder.
Yeah.
And the family's thinking, great, thanks. But how do we keep feeding this thing? Or even, where do we get the next one?
It's a bit like giving someone a car with no gas station nearby. And sometimes the subsidy paperwork itself is complex, another barrier.
Which leads us to the bigger energy picture, right? This isn't just about cylinders and kitchens.
Not at all. You need a whole robust energy ecosystem to support this shift. And India's power sector, well, it's still heavily reliant on coal.
Still the majority.
Over 70% of electricity generation is still coal-based. That's the conventional backbone.
But there is progress on renewables, isn't there? I've seen headlines about solar and wind.
Oh, definitely. Progress is happening. Renewables now make up nearly half, about 47% of the total installed capacity. That's key.
Installed capacity, right.
Solar is leading the way, over 100 gigawatts. Winds is around 48-ish gigawatts. And large hydro is about 52 gigawatts. So the capacity is growing, which is good news.
But capacity isn't the same as actual generation day to day.
Exactly. And the challenge is meeting India's absolutely soaring energy demand. Peak demand hit 238 gigawatts recently, February 2025. Expected to climb to 260 gigawatts in the summer.
That's huge growth.
Massive. So meeting that while also building out the clean energy needed for things like cleaner fuel production and distribution.
Yeah.
It's a monumental task. The target is ambitious. 600 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel capacity by 2030.
600 gigawatts by 2030. That's like trying to build an energy skyscraper in just a few years.
It's a very steep climb.
Okay, amidst these challenges, are there other fuel options emerging? You mentioned biofuels earlier.
Yes. Let's talk about the biofuel bandwagon. There's growing interest in things like compressed biogas, or CBG.
CBG, how does that fit in?
Well, the government's pushing it. Starting soon. 2025-26. There's a mandate to blend 1% CBG with compressed natural gas, CNG for vehicles, and piped natural gas, PNG for homes.
Just 1% to start.
To start, yeah. But the plan is to ramp that up to 5% by 2028-29.
And where does CBG come from?
That's the interesting part. It's made from things like agricultural waste, cattle dung,
Yeah.
stuff that's readily available locally, especially in rural areas.
So turning waste into energy.
Exactly. Which is great for the environment, reduces waste management issues, and this is key, potentially provides a new income stream for farmers. Turning cow dung into cash, basically.
Sounds like a win-win. Are there catches?
Well, the main catch is scale. You need huge investment in biogas plants to produce CBG in large quantities. And the supply chain for collecting the waste and distributing the gas, it's still very, very new.
Yeah.
Still in its infancy, really.
So lots of potential, but needs a big push. Are there schemes for that?
Yes. Things like the PMJI van scheme are aimed at boosting biofuel production. But it's a long road from, agricultural residue to reliably powering a kitchen stove across the country.
It sounds great on paper, but getting widespread adoption, it's almost like trying to sell, I don't know, kale smoothies at a popular samosa stall. People might be hesitant.
That's a fair analogy. Acceptance takes time and the infrastructure needs to be built out. But it's definitely a promising avenue being explored.
Okay, let's circle back to Ujjwala itself. Beyond just the fuel, you mentioned empowerment. What's been the real, tangible impact on women's lives?
This is arguably one of the biggest wins. We talked about the time saved up to 2 hours a day, not spent collecting firewood.
Which is huge.
It really is. Yeah. That time can be used for education, maybe starting a small home business, community activities, or just rest. It gives women back a part of their day.
That alone is transformative. But
Yeah.
It's more than just time, right?
Much more. It's about health. Cleaner kitchens mean fewer coughs, fewer respiratory illnesses, potentially lower rates of serious conditions like COPD in the long run, and it's also about dignity.
Dignity. How so?
The ease of just turning a knob for flame versus spending hours collecting wood and dealing with smoke. It provides a sense of modernity, control, and choice in their daily lives. It's a step up. Like, as you said, going from a basic phone to a smartphone, it just makes life more manageable and, yes, more dignified.
That's a powerful impact. So looking ahead, what's the recipe needed to really make this clean cooking revolution stick, to get past that half-cooked stage?
Right, what needs to happen? First, those subsidies need to stick. That means streamlining the process, making sure the money gets to families reliably and on time, no more bureaucratic delays leaving people stranded.
Okay, fix the subsidies. What else?
Second, that supply chain supercharge we talked about. Serious investment in rural distribution networks, getting those cylinders to villages efficiently. Maybe even thinking outside the box drones for remote areas. Why not?
LPG by drone? Interesting.
If e-commerce can deliver packages quickly, surely we can improve fuel delivery. And third, awareness campaigns.
Getting the message out?
Yeah, but doing it effectively. Using local languages, relatable examples, maybe highlighting the health benefits, the time saved, making it clear why ditching the smoke is a good move. Like your slogan idea, ditch the smoke, cook like a pro, something catchy.
Needs good marketing, essentially.
It does. Then fourth, that massive renewable energy boost is critical. You need clean power to support the whole clean fuel ecosystem eventually. Solar, wind, hydro, got to ramp it all up.
Go all in on green energy.
Pretty much. And finally, really scaling up CBG, pouring investment into those biogas plants, creating solid incentives for farmers to provide the raw materials, turn that agricultural waste into a national energy asset.
So it's a multi-pronged approach. Subsidies, supply, awareness, renewables, and biofuels.
Exactly. It needs concerted effort on all fronts.
Because big dreams without action, they're just hot air, aren't they? Like a pressure cooker with no whistle, just building steam.
Precisely. Time to plug the leaks, turn up the heat, and really get cooking on this cleaner future.
Now, it's worth remembering, India isn't doing this in a vacuum, right? How does this fit into the global picture?
That's a great point. This is part of a global push for sustainable energy. India's not alone. You see countries like Brazil, China. They're also working hard to scale up biofuels and renewables to meet their energy needs.
So there's shared experience, maybe lessons to learn?
Definitely. And India is also showing leadership in some areas. Take the ethanol blending program, for example, aiming for 20% ethanol blended in petrol by 2025.
E20 fuel, right?
Yeah. Projections suggest that could save India something like 1 lakh crore, that's over 10 billion US dollars in foreign exchange on oil imports.
Wow, huge savings.
And cut CO2 emissions significantly too, maybe by 54 million metric tons. It's like India planting its own energy garden, reducing reliance on imports, will also help in the climate.
But these global efforts face shared challenges too, I imagine.
Right.
Absolutely. Things like land use competition. Do you grow crops for fuel, like sugarcane for ethanol, or for food? That's a tricky balance.
A food versus fuel debate.
Exactly. And climate risks to the infrastructure itself. You build wind turbines, but what happens when a major cyclone hits? These are concerns everywhere, not just in India. So it's about learning from others, adapting global ideas, but forging a path that works for India's specific context.
Like a chef adapting a global recipe for local tastes.
Good analogy, yes.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. India's push for cleaner fuel, especially through Ujjwala, it's clearly a bold, necessary step.
Undeniably bold. A massive undertaking.
But definitely not a done deal yet. We've seen the scheme lit the way, getting connections out there. But those hurdles, high refill costs, shaky supply lines, deep-rooted habits, they're like wet firewood, really dampening the progress.
They are slowing things down considerably.
And while scaling up renewables and exploring things like CBG holds enormous promise.
Huge potential there.
It demands sustained political will, huge investment, and probably quite a bit of innovation, too.
No doubt about it. Rural India's kitchens really are at this fascinating crossroads, aren't they? Caught between age-old traditions and the pull of transformation. Like a movie plot.
Yeah. A bit dramatic, but true. The stakes are incredibly high, millions of lives, the health of the planet. But the potential payoff is equally massive.
A healthier population, a cleaner environment, empowered women. It's a future worth striving for. With the right mix of policies, investment, and maybe, a dash of that creativity, India can make this clean fuel dream a widespread reality.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with that lingering thought. What will it really take? What's the key ingredient to make this transformation truly stick, ensuring every single kitchen in every village can finally breathe clean air?
That's the crucial question moving forward.
Absolutely. Until we figure that out, let's keep the stove on low, keep stirring the pot, and hope the future brings the clean, clear promise of progress.